I think it's fascinating to know that everybody's all confused. You know why you're confused? It's a simple answer. Okay. Come a little bit closer, a little bit closer. Go inside. Okay. Why does everybody focus on everything except themselves? Why? It's because they don't understand the how. And I keep saying that over and over and over. The more you focus on yourself inside, you are a mechanism of travel. You're a feeding source, a vessel of communication, of GOD. It's a geometric operation of design. It's a computer operation of technology that's inside of you, waiting to come out. But if you fortitude your line settings and you block the line service location to your chakras, you're never going to understand anything of information like conditions because you don't see outside, you see inside location. Through the eyes. Everything's from inside. You don't hear from outside, you hear from inside out. Right? See, that's the connection line high interference that doesn't understand its location to its system. Right? You think you hear things from outside. No, it's inside out. Okay? Everything is inside. That direct location's outside. Inside, outside. Inner space, outer space. Inner line, inner link. Outer position, out of orbit, outer space. It's all spectrum calculation in your settings and all calculation position of its operation. All right? If you keep questioning your settings, you're never going to understand your body of operation. Okay? All answers are given to your inside location system. You tell me exactly why this light is going through my body. Why is this light going through my body? Because it's translucent. Because it's invisible. See? It's going right through. See? Light goes line setting to understand position track communications. It's all levels of volume inside condition of vortex. And this comes back line interference to space discoveries when it comes into time zones. The direct location of your system is time capacitor. How is it possible that you can actually see light through my body? See, it's through my finger now. Explain that. You can't until you understand the space inside of you, right? See, it goes right through my finger. See? Information is inside. Data of information is inside. Interline, interlink, intercalculation of space anomaly is inside locations of you inside positions. The mind and navigation is the timelines and position of your heart line. That correlates calculations to your soul identifications of lights of travel inside location and position, which is connecting line interference of your body of consciousness location system. So your body becomes all lines of translucent locations and patterns. That's how light is able to travel through your body location. Look at the frame line. See the cross line? See? Look at that. See? See the corner? It's right through my body. You explain that. You explain how that is going through my body. See? It's all levels of travel, right? So, see? Look. Right through. See? You can actually see it. Translucent. Translucent. Okay? So it's all calculated, modified inside location and high position. That's the only way you can understand anything through adaptation surface. And that's why everybody's confused, because the frequencies are higher. And when they get higher, what happens to your set location setting inside position? Confusing through alignments, right? But don't you think that's fascinating how actually you see the connections to the settings? See? Look, you actually can see it, right? So I'm a mirror resolution line setting to the light. And when I take it away and set location, you see it, right? But it goes right through your body, a translucent location settings. Multipass. So we all have to understand how this works. And everything works line. Look at that. It's amazing. It goes right through. It connects right through in a cross line. Isn't that amazing? And how our bodies form like that calculation setting into invisibility. It's incredible when you really understand the track communication to your soul identifications of lights of travel. Modify, it's all calculated in your system. Okay. So there's a lot of communications when it comes into high settings when you come into solar direct system. Now the calculations of line center is position line calculation streamline in set locations in position high interference. That puts the founders of space in solar line calculation generation streams. Okay. So in that position location of operation, you have to understand how to use it through patterns. High center location system. Now we're going to go back in frame line centers, back in calculation streamline and set location directions. You start with this line sentence, right? 36 fields, lines of 12 lines of square root, set calculation line and operation, center line and rotation settings, in calculation, equal line calculation of 10 lines of 2 line rotation interference, 12 set location setting, 12 lines line interference of north, west, south, and east in set location system, right? So that's 36 line center line position locations, equal line calculation to 12, 36, 46, add lines of 10, lines of 36, lines of 38, line rotation surface, sets position location of the sun, and at 8 center lines in infinity cycle. Set calculation, modification, settings. All right, so we set up line interference in 38 line rotation and set calculation streamline. That will be highest in line position attraction. That's it, done, right? So the 3 lines in set location sets lines of 0 lines, rotation and ground lines, operation service locations, and connects to a system. Travel line, center calculation, streamline, set line calculation setting into its solar sail and set location of directions. Directing line centers, operation surface, correlation line, and rotation in position, high interference calculation of system. Done by equation. See how set location setting and solar sails. All right. Okay, so out in that equation, really understand the formula's line setting. Rotation to surface calculates modification to its settings. Redirect signals to your alphabetical line rotation of keyboards. Now the keyboard line signals in set location system is now the solar line rotations. Correlation lines of travel is like in the Fibonacci line setting position. Operation surface, like in high interference of 2 arrows line rotation setting. 1 direct signal and 2 direct panels and calculations in the 3 set line conditionalized system, waiting on signal location of 3 line perimeter line rotation surface. Correlated interference, triangulation line set conditionalized system, travels settings into done core line rotation surface. Travels line, center calculation line directions. Center positions operate high calculation streamline. And this same rotation of solar plex, calculation line directions signals into an energy hub that rotates its surface and set location. Now this directs lines of perimeters and parameter line center location and 12 line signals and set location of travel. Okay. Cross the signals as 0 lines, take the 2 lines and line condition of 1 line rotation surface and set locations. It sets up line calculation to flex faster line condition, set lines of 2 line track lines. Correlated line interference, travel communication in the opposite directions, the set location system. One way, the opposite way, one way, the opposite way. Force line calculation lines, past, present, future, center calculation, timeline signal, cross line stream, set position locations, into cobwebbing, line rotation, and center calculation. Done by equation. All right. Okay. But it's amazing how you can actually see it, right? It's going right through my body. Isn't that amazing? It's absolutely incredible what light is, guys, and what it can do. Gypsy, Tina lines Bojan line interference, Chris calculation setting, Andy line and rotation, set line direction system, Trinity line interference, modify high center location of system, track communication settings. Okay, so getting in signal lines of panels and high lines of solar generation line stream location is 0 lines of correlation position locations into position of 38 line streams is calculated and modify how we use our fields. Okay, so the father's line setting is a space line and communication setting. We're going to try communication out of the equation, done by equations on line setting. So we go in the opposite direct location setting in direct signals instead of location to a system, right? Travel line center locations. Now this puts an optimum line center in a streamline rotation of 6 panels. All right, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 line condition settings. Solar sails in the opposite location center in center position. Now the 6 line calculation lines, we added 1 line position location, 1 perimeter. That's 7 location line settings. Crossing signals, setting line and direct signal and set locations. Directing line center line interference comes into the sun line of communication that directs the signals and line calculation setting and waving line settings of sonar. Sonar lines and line interference, line calculation settings, 0 line operation surface and set location of ground lines, Fibonacci line swirl, set location of 2 line signals, in line condition, high position location of 2 panels, in center line calculation line, position of triangulation at 3 set locations of directions. Okay, done by equation. Okay. So we're going to keep that signal line, and we're going to come back and to location setting directions in all system. Calculate modify line center locations of box, triangle, box, set location line settings, directions. Remember, we're adding frame lines. So we set up solar graph line stream, solar graph line signals, solar graph line position, operation of surface. Correlates lines at graph line, because you guys are coming in line signal locations in position location of 7, in position of 7, in position of 7, in position of 7, 7, 7 location settings. Equal line calculation line interference at 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, and 5 line. Calculation 6 and 7, 7 line position and line condition high system, and line track communication of 4 lines of generation stream. Directing signals, graph lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wash line, center line of rotations, correlation system, travel calculation line, direction high settings, Hubble line rotation, scan line settings, 0 calculation, 0 operation, 0 line travel, 0 line operation surface, root line, line rotation calculation, and 3 line rotation surface, correlation lines, a ground line rotation surface calculation. Done by equation. All right. So we set up line calculation setting. Okay, position of track line. Okay. Calculation line interference. That sets up 7 lines of 7 of 4, and 4 lines of 3, and 3 lines of 7, 7 position of 5, and 12 location setting in DNA track communications. Done by equation. All right. So that's going to travel line setting. Getting things up in space line is really to understand how to set position of track lines. Remember, the track communication is 2 panels of operation line setting rotation surface, all right? Crisscross location lines like tic-tac-toe. Getting that line rotations, we cross the signals, we open the signals, we cross the signals. It's actually tic-tac-toe. We operate the line setting, line connection setting. We cross the line, say location of 0, cross line, center line interference, and position locations. Now there's 3 line signal locations. I win in set location. Directing signals and set lines and calculation lines. 0 line operation surface, correlation setting, 3 triangulation line sets position. That sets correlation line interference. So the X lines and 0 line operation lines of boundaries of space now recognizes communication system to X, Y line setting. X position location of perimeter, line position of XX equal lines of Y. Y line center location of YX, line calculation setting. Sets position of track line calculations, then line of rotations, 38 line positions, 38 line rotations, 30 calculation strings. 3 line settings, 3 8 line rotations, and 3 position locations of 38, 38, 38. Calculation line and direct location of past, present, future, and center calculation string line and set locations. Done by equation. All right. So in that position of track line, we have to really understand how to recognize the communication to its program. Okay. So that's going to travel out. Bye-bye. Okay. As we set up line graphs, correlate set lines on high strips, 4 line strip lines, calculation position, track communications, 4 line centers, and center calculation of 0 line operation, right? So the 5 central line center lines of 6 that correlates line interference of moon line and opens all signals and set locations, the directions. Now directing signals is pi directions of time sequence. Puts panels lines of 1 line in position of 6 lines of 2 set locations of panels. Position line track line opens all position location higher calculation lines of stream locations. This directs signals in 0 line in a newer solar line, solar graph, solar stream, and set location of directions. Now this directs signals. We go through the 0 line operation of surface, correlating line interference, track communications, and 3 set line calculations and settings, and 3 lines of rotation surface and set locations. Okay, done by equation. Okay, so we add the frames, calculation of setting to an energy hub, rotates its surface, correlates its panels to operation line setting, scans its line signal, tures, and set location setting. We send energy graph lines of triangulation, triangulation, and triangulation of 3 set locations of directions. Okay. Now, in that triangulation line sense, we change the coloration path. Coloration path has to be set location of red. We change the triangulation line settings to 3 set locations of directions. That directs the signal locations of sonar and send lines of communication to a flux capacitor line stream and 2 triangulation line setting locations in the box position of center location. Okay. Now, to understand the 2 panels, we set 2 strips, lines, and set location of travel communications, right? This directs signals and line interference, opens all calculation line directions into higher calculation lines in solar graph line setting and stream locations. Okay, done by equation. All right. So that's going to travel line setting. Gone. Okay, so getting in signals is really understand how to set up graph line settings. We go in a black circle line stream. Now, black circle line is the location of T reception lines, 4 box line stream lines, okay? And line center line interference. So we take line conditions of earth, position of water, and position of fire, and position of air, correlation setting directions, all right? Set a calculation of U and center line in solar stream locations, all right? Now this directs signals. Now we set line communication 0 line, operation surface at ground line side. Now flux capacitor comes in 2 line settings in position locations, all right? So set lines of north, in position of east, in position of west, and position location of south, and set location of diamond core, and set location of travel. Directing signals lines, energy graph lines, 2 line strips, 3 line strips, 4 line strips, in position of 5 line strips and center calculation lines, and 6 and 7 lines and 7 positions into 4 track communications, the center position, all right? So T reception lines, now the box line triangles, line center location is going to travel, okay? Center position 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations, all right? Directing lines of 1, 2, 3 line settings and 3 set location directions. Center calculation 3, formulation lines of equal line calculation 3, 3, 3, and center calculation of 0 line, operation surface, and set location of directions. Okay, done. Okay. Center calculation line and line rotation interferences understand the Earth surface and set location lines, 4 graph lines and center calculation line positions of perimeters. So directing signals is really to understand how to modify its set location to a system. So also that's going to be traveling. Gone. Okay, so the center communication comes in line signal, graph communications, graph lines. We go into panels operation of formulas. 4 line center line in Fibonacci and set location settings. 4 line track line communications, all right? Equal line calculations of 3, 3, 3, and 3 set locations, all right? 3 lines of 4 lines of 3, take lines in position of 4, equal line conditions of 3, equal line condition size 7 equals 7, right? 7 lines and line calculation settings. So we take the 38 lines of fields, box line rotation surface, and location system. That puts position of 12, 12, 12, 12, and line conditions of 4 lines of weather line calculating system of 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, and 1, 1, 4, and set location line connections in weathers of correlation. Okay, done my equation. Okay, so we set up the 3 set line setting, travel calculations, modification line setting, jump scar line rotation surface locations, ears, calculation line stream, ear calculation streamline, setting calculation line directions, sonar line position locations, echo chambers, 1, 2, 3, and panel operation. Done by equation. All right, so that's going to travel. Okay. All right, let's see, listen while driving. Well, okay, yep, you can do that, signals and set location. Modulations, modules, lines of calculation, all line direct signals and set location to the system. Really standard track communication and settings. Okay, so we got the 0 line, operation line, track communications, right? That's where it is in setting. Okay, see that line interference? Okay, so this is where location line interference and bending space. Now it's bending line, center line interference, and 1 track communications, 1-dimensional line rotation surface into a solar sail, sets correlation line, direct signals and set location system in position. Operation line centers is 0 calculation line directions and 0 calculation lines at 3 set locations. Okay. Now we come in line spin. Spin lines high interference, setting position locations, operate surface into center communications and directions. Now, directing line signal is a line graph line, rotation center line, rotation to 3 set locations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 line center line interference in position. Operate line center line conditionized system. Now, the travel calculation line interference, we change the correlation directions, sets calculation or line settings, operation surface, indirect signals, and set location system, high setting. Directing line settings, line condition of 0 lines, and balance correlation line direction center and center position location, high calculation with system. Okay, done by equation. All right. That's also going to travel. Okay, so I'm setting up line calculations of solar sails. The conditions of founders of space is an echo-line chamber. Now, chamber sets lines of vortices, locations, and vortex calculation settings. It's a redirect signal and set location to its system, right? Yeah, that's fine, Trinity. Don't worry about location lines. So we have a line graph line setting, okay? Line graph line setting. It's not a line in communications. It's a line graph line setting, okay? Remember, everything is calculated modified through clock line rotation of center. Center, center, center. Code weaving line rotation surface and location setting directions. Directing lines of pi calculation in string location. Right? Directing signals and high interference of pi calculation string. Directing lines of 3 perimeter line rotation and flywheel calculation of 3 set locations. Okay, allocate lines of 3 in position location and line setting, 6, position of 9, and position of 12 sets location system. Retracting numbers. Okay, so 12 line sets lines of 12 in position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 set location directions. Now this directs the signal location of panels. So it's the solar streamline calculation line directions, because the founders of space and then the correlation lines of 3, 6, 9, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and set location line directions into 12 lines, parameters, 12 line calculation, 12 lines activation, and 12 line location of the clock line rotation surface. Done by equation. All right, so that's set up through metric scales and set location and measure. So we set line conditions in 1 dot set locations, right? Then we come into 2 scales lines, set calculation on the left and set calculations on right and set location of travel. Okay. Mechanism lines of round line interference, bending space, travel calculations, all line calculation setting, directing signals, location centers, change the optical line rotation, and set location of travel communications. Travel lines at 3, in position of 6, in position of 9, in position of 12. 12 line signature lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12 location setting directions. Now, directing signals of 12 lines is a perimeter line interference of 38 location settings. Directing signal lines of 2 lines, security position locations 2 over 6, 6 over 8, and set line calculation setting. Redirecting signals of 8, 8 in position location of triangulation line setting, 8 position of bottom, time frequency times line time capacitor, operation signals and set location setting, indirect signals. 7 correlation lines of 0 line rotation, correlation line interference of solar generation line stream, a calculation of magnetic high wave formation line calculation settings, and 38 parameters in set location. Okay, done by equation. Okay, I know it's extremely complicated, but you have to understand the creation of travel settings. It's gone. It's still there, but see, there's a reason why we keep track lines of frame lines and why we get calculated line in position of travel calculation streamlines. Okay, so we go into a vortex setting, V lines of velocity in acceleration to E line calculations of Mach. Okay, the Mach line center line in position of rotation surface sets line communication of sun and calculation directions. Now this directs the V lines into velocity line channels, atmosphere line calculation setting of its dimensional sail of operation surface locations. Now this directs line settings and levitation, travels line centers at ground line operation surface and line condition of flux capacitor and travel communication line directions into solar panels and line condition center and double helix and rotation surface and set location setting and perimeter parameters of triangulation to your pyramid line rotation setting and correlation ground lines of operation line signal. See the intelligence? Done by equation. All right. That's also going to travel setting out through equation. Done. So everything I'm doing is setting up. Now the future rotation line setting sets up a form line. Line calculation settings to its avatar set location directions. Avatar sets line connection, travels line settings, and all calculation modification. Right? Center calculation scan lines sets lines of sun line rotation surface and line calculation of the stream. Directing signals is center line communications, operation is sun line to the moon, and position of track communication. Directing signals, 12 line panels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and set line condition setting, directing signals, operation surface, travel calculation setting into opposite direction system, and travel calculation. Now, directing lines, setting line connection graph lines of the walkway surface, travel communication, directing high calculation line settings, walking surface location and travels, and set location line direction and position location of center calculation of stream. Okay, done by equation. Complicated, right? So getting into that center interference is really understand the center calculation that comes into position location at all levels of swirl. Swirls lines of new line calculation, line directing location of 0 line calculation in your timeline sequence. Done by equation. Right? So it's also going to travel. Done. Still there. Okay, so when it's still there, it's traveling faster. When it's traveling faster, it's setting up more lines of anomalies, setting correlation setting and direct location to your future adaptation line condition line system. Founders of space has to be in direct location in your timeline in sequence pattern calculation setting. simultaneously in high calculation line interference. Now, this is where we come in position location to simultaneous line stream and interference location to its position. This operates as set location setting and direct signals to your perimeters and parameters in security line division. This opens all signals as set locations. Zero calculation lines is solar line, streamline, and position in the opposite directions. Steady calculation line interference and double helix line rotation surface and set location of center. Operates line calculation and zero line calculation line stream in position location. Operates line and line rotation to its calculation position of traction. Traction line center line interference. One position equal line calculation 100%. Percent over lines equal lines over line. Calculation of pi and set location directions. Okay. Now, setting up signals correlates the panels of travel lines and set locations, all right, in positional line. Walking surface and 144 graph line settings and high stream locations. Okay, done my equation. Okay. Yep. Plasma, yep. Security, magnetic channels, relay, action, GPS settings. Yeah. Well, it's here you understand locations of its settings. So getting the geographical map lines of founders of space, you really understand the connection system. But he has to understand the walkway lines. So travel communication timeline, time jump. It's like Hubert. Sets lines of communication to a magnetic highway information line center communications, right? So he set up. So the travel communication line setting sets a calculation to an avatar line setting. It rotates its surface into the system, but it has to understand the walkway line settings. So we set up communications in travel line settings, one box line perimeter in center communication, triangulation line setting in top position locations, and triangulation line shift and down position locations, and center calculation line and position location, new test arc line calculation and Merkabah set location setting of star system. Done by question, right? All through modification, right? Time sequencing lines. It's also going to travel. Gone. Still there. All right. So as we get into more lines of formula, we come into retrospecs. Now the retrospecs line setting. So our lines, equal line condition system, memory line interference. We equal line calculation in the line setting, error line rotation, position of track lines, center calculation lines, and set locations and directions. Directing signals. Now, the panel calculation of sun line operates the surface location in one direct signal and set locations. This opens all lines as signal lines and set communications. This directs the signal location of the panels. And the panels cross a stream now. We got to be very careful because we set lines of graph lines in all calculated solar sail line rotations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 line setting and set locations. This directs lines and line center line interference and set location of center and position. This operates the set location setting and direct signals. Setting graph line settings of sonar communications in position of all calculations of pi, position line conditions of pi, and 3 set line condition line setting. Echo chamber lines, graph line stream, and another line of solar sail in position location of its operation location of center. Center calculation line interference sets position location of its relay to its line calculation setting to its position location of its orb, center line condition of north, east, west, and south line conditions of all travel communications. Okay? Done by equation. Hooah. Okay, so it's really understanding what you're seeing and why you're seeing it through location setting. All right? All right, so that's also going to get position locations. Speed line of travel. Okay, acceleration line stream. We go through the A line center. Now that's an outer line of rotation, one center line position of 2 lines and center communication of Fibonacci line condition setting to solar streamline interference and direct location system. Travel lines of 3 set locations, right? So you have to learn how to use the letters, numbers, and shapes and travel through it. But you can line signal, line cross lines. So it's really interesting when you really put all this together in set locations, acceleration lines, of Mach line, of channel line, operation string, or anything position locations in the line division locations of operation. Okay? Center calculation of the sun sets communication, right? The moon line sets line calculation and streamlines of a motion line rotation surface and set locations. This directs the signals in the opposite direct line setting in a 12-line perimeter in a 38 window and set location of direct settings and fields. Okay? Now, use the 38 line settings. That's fields, lines of rotation, surface, theta line rotation, setting calculation of center lines, and center calculation line direct location at 12 set location and measure. Now, in that rotation surface, it sets lines the atom, center calculation, line position, right? See the line condition that looks like a leaf? Well, that's a rotation line of a seed line, rotation center line, rotation surface, and line communication setting and position location to its set location of the system. Done by equation. All set up. All right, so the founder's line stream, we correlate line interference, okay? Still there, okay? So we center its communication. Now, when you center communication, you have to understand how to use it formula line settings. Formulating line setting is really understand how to set location to its setting in interference. It travels communication very fast and set location acceleration, but you have to understand the Mach center, okay? Maching center line interference. So in position locations to its umbrella is set communication of 2 settings and 3 set location line directions. Now this directs signals and line condition settings into your pyramid line and rotation surface and set location directions. Center calculation lines is 0 line, operation line setting of center communication of space and time. Directing signals lines of flux capacitor, flux capacitor, flux capacitor, and 2 panels operation. Directing signal lines of antenna, 2 positions, and 2 position locations. All right, that's 2, 4, and 6. 6, 6, 6, and 6 on ground line and 0 line operation. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 line settings, and 1, 2 high center. So we've got 4 track lines. Line is in mediation, line rotations of 3. 3 set line calculation setting direct signals into line center. 6 lines over 7, in position location of 7 lines of 6, and set location directions, high setting. Done by equation, right? So you have to really understand how this all works in form, okay? Really understand how to get into planet's surface. The rotational line spin cycles of the solar generation line stream has to be a correlation line direct settings in the geometric operation of 4 over lines of 3 in positions of pi that puts line center line interference in 7 position location of 6 and 6 lines of equal lines of 7 in position location of 4 and 3 line center line interference, 7 bodies of water and track communication near 12 DNA in a GOD in a high calculation line stream in solar location setting and direct signals a generation stream. Done by equation. Okay, it's all set up. All right, making rounds and rounds. So you understand, Trinity, and what's going on through location setting? All right. So getting in position of high setting location, done, but it's still there. Okay, so as we come into that line interference, we set location of the sun. There's the sun position location, the operation service. Remember, this is the foundation lines of sun. This is all calculated position of ground lines. Ground line operation of mother and position of the track line. Mother's in line settings, father in center communication, left line positions. Atom line rotation interference, atom and line condition of Eve, and set location of center of operation. Okay? Directing signals, triangulation line setting, and triangulation surface, 1 position of track line. The operation line center lines its atom rotation surface, set location to its form, and line rotation to acceleration, line condition of velocity, volume, line interference, and travel communication. Now, this directs signals to set location line settings in position location earth line, rotation center, rotation center, rotation center, and 4 set locations, setting calculation of high calculation lines, center line rotation interference, and travel calculation of lacing lines, and 3 set location directions. Okay? All set up. Theta lines, round lines, rotation surface, metabolic line rotation interference, a data line, box line rotation, set line calculation setting. So we change the ground lines and line rotation in set location high center into windows of activation lines of 38 line rotation of fields and set location of traction. Okay, done by equation. All right. So like I said, it's in formation line centers now. Okay, and that's traveling. Okay. Woo! Okay, so getting that formula's equation, you have to really understand the set lines and high calculation of this tree. The tree lines is center lines of 0 line, operation is center line, rotation center line interference, in position location operation to its surface. Now the surface line calculation line interference sets position locations, coming at data line streamlines, Omni universe line conditions of panels, position locations in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is set location as setting. 1, 2, 3, position of 6 and 7 in the center location of directions. Setting cross line streams, setting direct location as 7, setting location of 7, set location line direct locations of balance. Setting balance line as stream, electrical lines, electrical infusion, electrical panels, electrical operation line interference of solar generation line and all rotations calculation setting. Setting calculation line interference in position location atom. Atom lines equal lines electron. Electron comes in line, center line interference. Travel calculation setting, direct signals, a solar panel, solar energy, solar line calculation setting, free energy line rotation, center calculation streamline, direct signals instead of location travels, travel line calculation setting, data line interference, box line rotation center, calculation string, center calculation zero line is zero operation. Done by equation. You can see it travel. All right, so that's done. Taking that out, still traveling. Bingo. Yeah. Well, you see what you need to see is what you've already been seeing, which has already been said, which has already been done. Okay? So calculation, line interference, location, travel. All right? So getting in that position location, you have the earth line, right? Set of calculation lines. So you got position location of tracks, center position location of travel. Okay? Now, the rotation spin cycle, we set up the solar line streamline, the center communication, center just directions, right? Center calculation in center position. It operates line settings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 line condition settings and directions, right? Now, the center calculation line position location sets up line settings, directing signals, position of 2 panels, 3 panels, 4 panels, and set location and directions. So the calculation line interference. So that's 3 lines, 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 and 3 lines. So we've got 3 lines of perimeter, 3 lines of rotation, 3 lines of surface, and 3 lines of locations, and all calculation line interference and calculation streamline of GOD. Okay? Now, in that signal line interference, we set up the 2 panels. This is a matrix stream location setting and direct signals into row graph location setting of energetic graph line stream location setting directions. Directing signals lines sets position locations in your perimeters and parameter location system. Travel line communication line, center line interference. Zero gravity line interference, travel calculation of 0 lines, travel calculation of 2 lines, travel calculation of 3 lines, travel calculation of 4 lines, 5 lines, 6 lines, and 7 line conditions of 4, and track communications. Done by equation. All right. So we're going to put an allocated switch. Done. All right. Remember, even though it's disappeared, it's still there. Okay. So getting in track communication is understanding the connection line settings. Now, remember I was telling you about the scales? The calculation line stream and position location of boundaries of space has to identify its setting into your time sequence. To understand the time sequence is understand the time perimeter. Now, it has a capacity over pi. That pi recognizes its communication line setting and line rotation interference of center calculation setting to your solar stream calculation setting in your position to your chakra locations. Okay? So getting into modification line and rotations, we have a solar line stream. Is that line condition of the sun and position location of the moon. Okay? Directing signals and triangulation. Okay? So this centers lines and line setting. We come into all calculation streamlines into location grid instead of locations. So travel line interference looks like an ice cream cone, right? Directing signals, operation line setting. So we're setting up geometric line rotation interference, so location system. What is that through correlation line interference? Right? What does that position location do in settings? You see the peak? See the line condition system? It's historic. Right? Setting direct signals is understand the 0 line at correlation line direct signals instead of location near sun of operation to perimeter. Okay? Setting direct signals in line operation surface locations goes in the opposite high set location of directions. Directing signal lines, there's triangulations of a box line rotation surface locations. All right? There's the TV line setting. Now, the lacing line communications, this is where it changes the colors of travel lines. We set up the triangulation lines, we box this location system. We triangulate the center, we box the location of setting positions into east line. Calculation of 0 line, boxes location of triangulation of set location. Okay, done by equation. All right. So releasing dry ice into alliance, location, released in the atmospheres, changing weather to cool the set. Well, it's all set location near travel settings, right? Okay, so that's going to be position direction. All right, so setting up these formulas, equation line stream, puts you in a high calculation in your system. Let's get you into modules. Okay, we have to understand the modulation line interference, navigation line settings, and A lines. A lines of navigation, A lines of position location of spectrum, spectral location of communication, communication line interference of CPU, and sublocation of track. All right, so we changed the provision line setting. So we set location line center interference and position location of box lines of proxies. Proxy line center lines calculation setting and direct signals into the location system. This puts up line calculation settings in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 lines. 6 lines of 7. And again, you go through 7 lines of 5 and position of 12. Calculation of 12, and position of 12, and position of 12. Sets lines of calculation line interference in position of 36, line calculations line setting. 36 line calculations in 10, puts position of 38 in set locations and directions. All right. So 12, 24, and 36 add line, center line, and high interference, travel communication line directions, puts you in a 48 track communication of center. So that's 48 windows, lines of triangulation of 1 set. That's 48 line center location of 2 set locations. That's 48 line center line communication of center communications, and 48 lines windows to track communication line direct signals and set location high center interference, and travel lines of dimensional line, lock line signals in calculation of code lines of rotation. Done by equation. Okay. All right, now it's getting complicated, but set locations, boom, gone. Travel, still there, set location direction. We having fun? Is everybody having fun? Isn't this great? What we're doing? Resetting line calculation to everything in position, especially when you come in at 74 line signals, a phenomenal location of 1 channel and 1 provision to all calculation line settings. 0 lines, calculation of 9, lines of 3, position location of 12, right? 3 sets of lines of perimeter, okay? 3 lines of line interference and 3 set locations of travel set locations, okay? So we take the 3 lines, center calculated at 3, and 3 in set location of center. Heart, mind, and soul is ready, okay? So we change the heart line, calculations in line and connections, heat lines and signal to line stream interference, and position location of positive or negative, lines of negative or positive, negative or positive, 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 and 3 set location, 3 center. Okay, done by equation. It's all set. So changing direct signals is understanding how to modify the line position location of spectral calculations. So we take the box line center and set location of 1 line position right there. Change the communication lines of 4 box location centers. Okay, travel calculation line directions into its hearts, into its mind of its spectral communication of 3 line waves. Set correlation setting and direct signals and set location system in direct signal and set locations. Okay. Now, directing line center line interference, we set the 4 line tracks and we set lines, each lines of 3. So we set up 3 cells in position of opposite direct location setting and direct signal and set locations. Okay. Now we got 1 line setting of 3, 3 lines of 4. We travel the correlation lines of travel calculations of cross line stream lines and high center interference, travel calculation line, direct signals and position location of solar sail, direct the signal line interference of 12 line rotation center and correlation setting, directing line interference of travel communication line operations surface to the sun communication of directions. Okay, done by equation. Okay. Don't try to understand what I'm doing because it's already done. Try to understand the vibration of what it is in correlation through your body and reaction. Okay, I'll set location to its setting. Okay, very complicated, but very formative in set location position lines of boundaries of space. Okay, still there. Okay, so in that position locations, setting line settings and high line rotation interference, we come into the set location setting, directing signal locations into solar systems. Now the directing signals, we got to come into graph line streamlines. We box in lines of 0 line, 4 box line settings and position locations in 1 setting. Triangulation of 1 lines, which is the back line setting and position of spectral communications, right? Travel lines, so we go into the opposite location, we set up a location graph line, streamline, position location of cloud lines into 4 line tracks, in position location into line centers of all set locations in 3 line center rotations. We have the correlations of 3, 3, 3 and panel communications in 1 line rotation, in flux capacitor, new channel line, stream line interference, and set location line parameter line interference and set location. Okay, done by equation. All right, so we can take that out of the equation. See? Boom, still there. All right. So it's not finishing, it's moving, it's evolving. So what that's doing is expanding line center location of your system, position of trunk lines. All right, so getting into spectrum position locations, all right, to a graph line stream of Gaussian settings. Now we have a Gaussian line, equal line condition settings of 111, 112, 113, and 114 is set location of sun position operation. So the one line, remember, get used to doing this. Setting up formula's equation is not a solar text line. It's a correlation of travel through set locations, right? So you use an indicate line interference of letters, numbers, and shapes to travel through calculation setting to a half pipe of 6 location settings, the directions, guys. It modifies an all line position to how you see it through correlation, all through track. So one line, and this is how you create the solar sails, the set locations in a 4-line rotation setting directions. Solar sail line communication set in position to its energy hub of set location of settings, travel calculation line, ground line, operation service location, operation to its crop circle. Multi-pass, right? Scan line division, center calculation line, 0 line calculation stream line is set location position operation. All right, so we got line position location of 2 perimeters. That's 2-dimensional line streams. Center correlation line to travel communication to setting position operation. Okay. Now that directs signals. Now we set lines of force line. The force line sets a triangulation line interference. So in that perimeter line interference, we take the one set line calculation setting. Okay, it's traveling too fast. Set position location track lines, bring back position line condition settings. Okay, so one line, 3 set perimeters. Calculation 1 line, 2 line, and position of calculation 1, 1, position of 3, position of 1, 1, 4, and calculation setting. Directed signals, graph line streams 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and set location and line settings. In that track communication across signals, in position locations and line interference of 1, 2, 3, 4. And line direct line settings, and we travel communication line interference, we go back in line rotations, back in future adaptation, back in center operation line calculation strength, back in correlation line direct signals, in calculation line in position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, calculation line stream interference, and we set calculation line interference to its calculation of umbrella line interference position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 location setting, and direct signal set location 7 position, 7 location, 7 operation, 7 position activation stream. Done by equation. All right. That's traveling through set lines of communication. Done. Okay, so that's what you guys have to get used to. Form this equation line interference to really understand how to use letters, numbers, and shapes through a half pipe line position of travel. Okay, correlations with settings. All right. So we get in the operational line a spectral communication command center. It's a space command. So we set the lines of 0 line, operations, surface location settings, directing signals. Okay, so we come into calculation line interference location of sun and position location of the moon. That rotates the surface location setting and direct signals in location of trimester line settings. So that's 12 in perimeter, 12 in calculation, 12 in activation, and 12 in location system. Okay, setting direct signals to set locations. So we set up the line calculation Mother Earth, track communications, line connecting, high interference, and ground line rotation surface and set location directions. Now, setting calculation line interference, Mother comes in lines of echo line chambers and 2 panels of operation stream. That directs the signals line interference, center calculation line in rotations into 144 travel communication and center lines of solar line position location high setting, directing signal line in position of all levels of boundaries of space. Correlation of sun. Sun comes in setting, kaleidoscope line communication, and direct signals into Mother Earth in rotation. Multi-pass and set locations. All right. So the solar streams of Mother Earth is now in a calculation infusion, line conditions of cold infusion, hot infusion, location of sun, directing signal line interference and modulation line calculations of yin and yang, the process of calculating the line, directing line center, interference and travel communications, ground lines, operation surface, and set location of crop circles, sending communication line interference and travel communication. Indirect signals in set location system, it's operating line centers and line communication, high interference and travel communication to its settings. Multi-pass and set location of directions. Okay, toss it up. Okay. So Mother Earth is now infused through founders of space line and infusion line interference of cold fusion, hot fusion line interference, and travel communication setting direct signals as locations. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing how it's set up location of a system? All right. Yeah, I know it's a lot to understand, Jess. All right, so we're going to save that in line setting because we come back line rotation interference, track communication line directions. Setting up lines of solar sail, lines of Mother Earth, and ground lines of new operation line condition of crop circles as applications. All right, so we're going to keep that on track communications. All right, so as we go into perimeter line setting, we set up a connections to a security box line string. Box line rotations, and three line condition settings. Three line settings of modulation, line interference, and monetize, like conditions of affirmation line rotation, calculations of all lines, fermentation line rotation, calculation of the form lines, calculation of communication lines, correlation line direction settings, power over line setting and position locations over line calculations of relays, underscore line center and signals, setting to same location operation surface, that puts this location system, a pi recognition line setting, high calculation of box line, triangulation line interference, box completion, triangulation line direction setting, space position location A8 position, A8 position, A8 position, A8 position, A8 position, 4-track communication line setting, direct signal locations and centers of our operation line setting location calculation. Done by person. All right, so that's set location high setting. Pi calculation line directions, travel communication, gone, but still there. Okay. So you understand how this all works through pi, guys. This inner lines is calculation. Yes, exactly. Inner cons of 4, in position of 5 time sequence. Now, directing signals, we really understand how to use the letters, numbers, and shapes in a correlation panel. The correlation panel has to be one spectral communications of one pi of one direct signal in one timeline frame, which is your correlation system, into 24 round lines of center calculation setting of yin and yang. Okay? Okay, so I'm just showing you the line centers. So when you get in that line rotation and position of track lines, you have to really understand how to use it through formation. Okay, it's very important you understand these things, right? Because it's all modified. One line signal, line setting. Okay, 2 lines, 3 lines of track communications, right? Directing signals. Now the panel line center line interference is specific locations. All right, so it's a side line, wing line, high calculations to an H in the high center line conditions. H line center, line of center communication position. Remember, you can use anything in set line connection setting, but it travels right away in set lines of 4 set location directions. Directing signals line the position of 2 panels of 3 box locations of centers. Directing line center line interference as 0 line operation center line calculation setting all calculation line directing signals at set locations. All right. So getting to that line rotation, you set the box line, TV reception line calculation streamline. This opens all channels line calculation setting and direct signal at set locations. Now, inline line interference, it sets line calculations high setting. Okay, you got 3 box line rotations, right? One in east, one in west, and set locations, and 0 line and 0 communication to center position. Okay, now, understanding the fluctuation lines, the flux path over pi is a correlations of power. Power lines at center lines of communication to its magnetic line setting and center communication of center position. All right. The center position location operates the signal lines and crosses line calculation setting and position location of Saturn. All right. Saturn lines its rotation surface into Jupiter. Now, Jupiter sets a line connection setting to its surface and engine that sets correlation line panels and line connection solar direct line center locations of Mother Earth and set locations of fathers of space and direct signals as center line communication and an open signal line position locations of theta communication. Multipass! All right, setting line rotations, travel line centers of 3-track line communications in high setting. Right, so we come into 12 line signature lines of your pyramid line of visionary cortex string mode position location setting directions. See how powerful that is? Do you see how powerful that is? All right. So we got 2 channel line streams, lacing lines of 2 lines in position of 3. Now we set 3 lines, but 3 lines equal lines of 1, which you calculate lines of positive and negative sets position of 4. It set location of left lines of space. And we do the perimeter line interference to set location line interference of 4 over 3. Sets calculation of 7, but 4 line directed signal set location system. So we have 3 lines of panels, lacing lines of communication, all line interference, 3 lines, 8 lines of 4, 4 lines of 7 set calculation setting, in position of 5, in position of 12, 24 line center, in position of 36, the 38 field lines of rotation surface and calculation line in directions, and 3 8-line setting the high calculation lines of future adaptation surface and the solar generation strain and set locations. Done by equation. Look how powerful that is. Okay. Holy Toledo. All right, so signal panels, high center line interference, travel communications. Done, but still there. All right, remember, it evolves. It changes line direct settings. Even though it disappears, it's gone, but it's not gone through location of where you think it is. So travel line centers in one signature line panel. Okay, gray surface line calculates setting direct signals as locations to your setting interference. So this is where it comes into a kite line and a line rotation of dimensional sail, and to operate line rotation surface in set location directions. Center calculation zero line operations, center calculation line interference, solar strain line interference, correlations of mother line track locations and position locations into connection line interference, product of sun, which is atom and E line rotations, center calculation line directions, father space lines at ground lines, operation surface, a space calculation, line adaptation surface. Okay, done by equation. It's all set up. All right. Signature patterns, correlation line direction locations. We come into 75 line signature line string location of timelines, start line rotation center. 4 line tracks, 5 line signals, 9 line center line interference of tropic communications. Done by equation. Okay. Right? All through light signature. See? Goes right through me. Right through me. All right, that was fun. Questions or comments? Let me know. Adios.